In 1932, a Paiute man told a writer that a people lived in the dark somewhere beneath Death Valley. Was it only a story told to frighten children, or the memory of something real, buried under stone and salt? The man's name was Tom Wilson, a Paiute wholly at home in this country of bare rock, salt and killing heat. But the story he carried was not his own. It reached back to his grandfather, an old man, many years before. The tale began high in California's Panamint Mountains, the pale wall of peaks that fences Death Valley along its western edge. There, the story says, the grandfather found a tunnel worn into the rock, and for reasons never explained, he walked inside. He went down, deeper into the darkness beneath the Panamints, until the light behind him failed, and then the old man vanished. Not for a day, and not for a season. His family did not see his face again for 3 long years. And then, without warning, he returned older, altered, carrying a story that no one in the valley could quite place. Below the mountains, he said, the tunnel opened onto a whole world, and in that hidden world lived a strange people. They spoke a language he had never once heard, words with no root in any tongue known across his desert home. They were dressed in leather and worked in unfamiliar ways, moving through their buried country as though it had always been theirs. There were horses among them, and there was gold. So much gold that it seemed to mean little to those who held it. For 3 long years the grandfather lived among these people, a stranger in a country that lay beneath his own. Then he climbed back up through the tunnel, out into the blinding sun, and returned to a family that had mourned him. This was the story Tom Wilson passed to a writer in the year 1932, told plainly, in his own words. The writer was Bourke Lee, and the account survives in his book, Death Valley Men, inside a chapter he called Old Gold. And here the true tale grows far quieter, smaller, stranger than the sprawling legend it would slowly be turned into. In that chapter from 1932, there are no flying ships, no strange machines, no vanished technology of any kind at all. There is no grand famous name for these people either, none of the sweeping labels later writers would eventually attach to them. What Bourke Lee actually wrote is smaller and stranger, and somehow harder to shake, a plain account of a man who vanished. And this story was never rootless or borrowed. In the telling, Tom Wilson named it plainly and clearly as a Paiute legend. He called it Paiute more than once, his own people's story, not some curiosity gathered up from a stranger's distant land. And its roots ran deeper still. An ethnographer named J.W. Powell had gathered southern Paiute folklore back in the 1870s. That was roughly 65 years before Tom Wilson ever spoke, the very same tradition carried quietly forward across the generations. In that very same conversation, Wilson shared a second Paiute tale, one that strangely echoed an ancient story from across the world. It ran close to the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, a desperate journey into the underworld to reclaim the beloved dead. 2 modest stories, then, not the epic of a hidden empire, but folklore, human-sized, about what might lie beneath the ground. So what did that grandfather truly walk into, down there in the dark beneath the Panamints? The old legend never answers. But this legend belonged to people who truly knew the desert, and real lives were rooted in this ground long before any writer arrived. So before chasing whatever lies below, one question comes first: who truly made a home on the burning floor of Death Valley? The legend placed a hidden people in a tunnel below. Yet above that ground walked a people who knew this valley in daylight, by name. That underground tale came through Paiute telling. But the homeland itself belonged to the Timbisha Shoshone, a different people, a different name, a different role. It matters to keep them apart. The legend of a people below is one thread. The Timbisha living above the salt are another entirely. And they were here long before any wagon or any prospector. The National Park Service puts it plainly, in words worth hearing. The Timbisha Shoshone lived in this valley, the record says, for centuries before the first white man entered it. Centuries. Not a season, not a generation, but an unbroken presence on the hottest, driest floor the continent has to offer. And that raises a quiet question. How does anyone endure a place where summer ground can cook and rain almost never comes? The answer was movement. The Timbisha moved with the seasons, between mountain and valley, between mesquite groves and springs. Each place offered something. The record speaks of enjoying the game and the harvests that each elevation gave across the turning year. High in the pinyon woodland they gathered pine nuts, a cool weather store from the mountains that could carry a family through winter. Lower down in the valley heat, mesquite trees gave their beans, a staple ground and stored from the flats below. But the deepest knowledge was water. They knew the springs, knew which cracks in the crust held it, in a land that hides it well. In the hottest place on the continent, water is life by the mouthful. To know where it rose was to know how to stay alive. And many of these places were more than useful. The record notes that many areas were, and are, considered to be sacred. Even the name they carry tells the truth of it. Timbisha, Timpisa in their own tongue, does not mean death at all. It names a color. Red ochre, drawn from the Black Mountains, a pigment gathered from the earth itself. The old ones used that red earth in ceremony. A people named not for death, but for a sacred color of their own land. Death Valley is the newer name. It came from gold seekers passing through, a stranger's word, not the name the people here gave their home. So the phrase Death Valley is an outsider's verdict. To those who belonged here, this was simply home and had long been so. And they did not vanish into the past tense. The Timbisha Shoshone are here today on the same ground their ancestors walked. In the year 2000, the Timbisha Shoshone Homeland Act returned a piece of this valley to its first people in law. A reservation now sits at Furnace Creek, around 300 acres of homeland, held again by the people whose name means red ochre. 300 acres is small against the vastness of the basin, but it is theirs by right, a living thread, not a closed chapter. So set aside the picture of primitives with a superstition. Here was a people who read this desert like a page few outsiders could see. They were not the authors of a fairy tale. They were people with real, hard-won knowledge of the hottest ground on the continent. And of everything they knew, one knowledge stands above the rest for what comes next. They knew where the water was. In a valley of salt and stone, they knew where it rose to the surface, and perhaps sensed how much more lay out of sight. And that quietly turns the question. It is no longer only who lived on this land, it is what lies beneath it. The legend imagined a people in the dark below. The Timbisha knew a water that came from somewhere down there too. So what is truly hidden under the lowest, hottest floor on the continent? Not a city, perhaps, but something no story invented. The answer is not folklore. It runs in stone and water, deeper than any prospector guessed, older than any legend told. To follow the water down is to leave the legend behind and meet the real thing waiting beneath Death Valley. That descent begins now. And the rock has an answer of its own, one that owes nothing to legend and was waiting long before any story was told. The search does not begin on the open salt at all, but at one small, unremarkable break in the surrounding desert rock. What it holds is nothing any legend promised, something far older than any people, and in its own quiet way, far stranger. East of the valley floor lies a place called Devil's Hole, a narrow slot of water opening into the desert rock. It looks like a small pool, but it is the mouth of a flooded cavern that drops down into the dark. Divers have descended over 500 feet, 152 meters, and still the bottom has never been mapped. No one knows how deep it truly goes. The rock simply swallows the light, and the water keeps a secret it has never surrendered. And in that water, something lives. A single tiny fish found in this one pool and nowhere else on the entire planet. The Devil's Hole pupfish, a relic, a survivor left behind when the ancient lakes withdrew and the desert closed in around it. How long has it been cut off? The traditional estimate runs to 10 or 20,000 years, a figure new genomics now disputes. Newer readings of its genes suggest it may be far younger, perhaps only 1,000 or 2,000 years old. Either way, this fish has held on in one warm pool longer than almost any creature has survived anywhere on Earth. That is what waits beneath Death Valley. Not a lost people, but deep water and living time older than memory itself. If a place this strange is worth an hour of curiosity, a subscribe keeps these quiet desert histories coming. Now, that pool is not sealed off. Devil's Hole is a window into something much larger hidden under the rock. The nearby springs of Ash Meadows are the discharge point for a groundwater system that reaches over 100 miles to the northeast. But this is water moving through stone, not a network of passages, no corridors, no chambers a person could ever walk. The connection is hydrological, not physical. Rain that fell long ago, threading slowly through buried carbonate rock for 100 miles. So the desert hides an ocean of a kind, not open caverns to explore, but water held in the pores of the earth. Back at the surface on the valley floor itself, the ground keeps telling the same story: water and deep time. At Badwater Basin, the land sinks to 282 feet below sea level, 86 meters, the lowest ground in North America. A blinding white plain of salt stretches to the mountains, and every grain of it was once at the bottom of a lake. They call it Lake Manly, a body of water that filled this valley and then vanished into the dry air. It evaporated tens of thousands of years before the first wagons of 1849 ever crossed this ground. The lake had no outlet, so over time the water left behind only its sediment and its salt layer upon patient layer. So the lowest, hottest place on the continent is the grave of a vanished sea, its floor written in salt. Taken together, beneath Death Valley there is water, there is a drowned cavern, and there is time older than any human story. But there is no city, no corridors, no lamps, no hidden people. The science finds a world of water and stone, not a nation. And that leaves the sharpest question of all still standing, untouched by any of it. If there is no underground race, then where did the story of one come from, and why does it still spread today? The rock kept water and deep time, but the tale of a people below was made somewhere else, and that is where it leads next. So the answer was never in the ground at all. A story like this does not simply appear, someone shaped it deliberately for a reason. To answer that, we have to trace the story backward, not into the earth, but through the years that reshaped it. It begins in 1932 in a plain book called Death Valley Men, written by a man named Bourke Lee. In its pages, a Paiute man named Tom Wilson tells of a people said to live in tunnels beneath the Panamint Mountains. But notice what Wilson's story does not contain. No spaceships, no glowing machines, no flying craft, only a strange people and the dark. The 1932 tale is modest, human, almost quiet. A story a man might tell, not a monument to a lost machine age. Then something changes. 17 years later, in 1949, the story reappears, but it has grown. It surfaces in a magazine called Fate, in an article titled Tribal Memories of the Flying Saucers, signed by a writer calling himself Oga Make. Here, for the first time, comes the word Hav-musuvs, a name absent from the 1932 book entirely. And with the name come the machines, rowing ships, and flying canoes that cross the desert sky. A modest people becomes a flying race. The story does not stop there. It keeps traveling, decade after decade, gathering weight it was never born with. By the 2020s, it lives online, sold on conspiracy sites as a proven underground megacity, humming with ancient technology. Each retelling adds a layer. The further the tale travels from 1932, the thicker the technology grows. And here is the detail the myth forgets. Even the fringe compilation that fused these accounts admits something quietly damning. A text called The Secrets of the Mojave concedes these are two separate stories, joined only by what it calls a striking similarity. Two stories, not one. A resemblance is not a source, and a similarity is not the same as a memory. So the word Hav-musuvs is not old Paiute ethnography. It is a later, composite label stitched together in 1949. This is worth saying plainly, out of respect. The real Paiute story was always smaller, more human than the myth built upon it. And the Timbisha Shoshone, who have lived this valley for generations, were never inventors of a tall tale. They were people who knew the desert. Now return to where this began, the descent into darkness, beneath the lowest, hottest ground in America. At the start, that darkness held the promise of a hidden people. Now we descend again, and something has changed. Because we know now what truly waits below. Not a city, not machines, but water, still ancient water, moving through stone for 100 miles. And time. In a flooded cavern, a small pale fish survives, marooned for thousands of years, a living fragment of a vanished lake. The underground time is deeper than the legend itself. Beneath Death Valley there is real hidden life, only it is water, and it is old. So here is the honest shape of it. The water is real, the caves are real, the relic life in the dark is real. But a city is not there. A people is not there. In all the water and stone, no lost race has ever been found. And yet we should not pretend to know too much. Where the story truly came from, no one can say for certain. Perhaps it is memory, the echo of something real, worn smooth by time. Perhaps it is simply a good story told once around a fire. We do not have to choose. The valley keeps both answers, the way it keeps its water, hidden, patient, and quiet. And so we climb back toward the light, leaving the tunnel to its dark, carrying not an answer, but a better question. Some things beneath Death Valley are finally known. And some, like the people in the dark, were perhaps always meant to stay a story.